Welcome class. Today we are going to study about shift in supply curve due to change in supply. In the previous live class we talked about change in price, how it applies shift in the supply curve. So when there is shift in supply curve due to change in supply, we get two types of shifts. First we have the leftward shift and second we have the rightward shift. Now what do you understand by the leftward shift? Leftward shift means when fall in supply is denoted at the same price of any commodity, the curve shifts to the left side. Okay, suppose for example, this is our particular graph of X and Y. Here we have the price and here we have the quantity. Now, if the quantity supplied at this particular region, this is the quantity supplied. Now, if originally or initially, if the price of the commodity is P and the quantity supplied is Q, so this will be the particular graph of the supply curve. Now, if the quantity supplied falls down, that is from Q, it reaches to Q1. If there is a shift in the curve at the same price, then what will happen? This curve will shift towards the left side. Henceforth, it is known as leftward shift. Now, what about rightward shift? That means if I'm increasing the quantity, if initially the quantity was at Q and the price remains the same here, then from Q it shifts to Q2. All right. So the quantity is increasing here. That means the curve is shifting to right side. The supply curve is shifting to right side. Therefore, it is known as rightward shift. Now, based on these two phenomena only, we have it is leftward shift is known as increase in supply, and the rightward shift, the curve, supply curve, which is shifting right side, rightward shift is known as decrease in supply. Now let us understand with the help of a diagram and a table how increase in supply takes place and how decrease in supply takes place. Welcome students. In the previous live class, we talked about shift in supply curve due to change in price. Now we are going to talk about shift in supply curve due to change in supply. So when there are two types of, when there are changes in shift in supply curve, there are two types of shift we can see. Let us understand with this with the help of an example. Okay. Now say this is a particular type of graph where the quantity is shown on x-axis and the price is shown on y-axis. In this shift, children, we are talking about where the price remains constant or the price is same and the quantity supplied can be increased or decreased. Suppose OQ from O to Q is the initial or say original quantity that is surprised at the price P. Now suppose if the quantity supplied becomes less, if it goes from Q to Q1 at the same price level, the graph drawn will be somewhat like this. This will be the supply curve. So what do we see from the initial position? It is shifting to left side. Henceforth, when quantity demanded becomes less at the same price, it is known as leftward shift. Leftward shift, that means the curve. The supply curve shifts to left side and it is known as decrease in supply. It is also known as decrease in supply. Similarly, what happens if the quantity is increased? That means originally from O to Q, if I increase it to OQ2, what will happen at the same price level? If I draw this particular graph, I will also get, again I will get a straight line, but this time this will be shifted to right hand side. Therefore, when the supply curve shifts to right hand side, it is known as rightward shift. It is known as rightward shift. Why rightward shift? Because I have increased the quantity of units supplied in the market at the same price level, and therefore it is known as increase in supply, because from Q I've increased it to Q2. So therefore the economy will notice increase in supply. This is known as change in or shift in supply curve when there is change in the supply of, or you can say when there is change in the quantity of supply that is provided. I hope this much is clear, children. Next, we will move on to effect on supply curve due to changes in other factors. We talked about in the live class what happens when there is a change in price. We see upward and downward shift. Now, when there is change in supply, we see leftward and rightward shift. Also, we are going to talk about the other factors. What happens when the other factors comes in changes, then what effect this has on the supply curve. Now, let us discuss about effect on supply curve due to changes in other factors. Other factors we have done in supply function, where individual supply function and market supply function is affected by what all factors. For example, price of other goods, state of technology, then taxation policies, then we have means of transportation and communication. All these things are included in other factors. So first other factor, let us see what happens when there is change in price of other goods. We see two phenomena. What happens when there is increase in price of other goods? When there is increase in price of other goods, then production of such other goods become more profitable in comparison to the given commodity. Okay, so for example, if the given commodity is Q and it is priced at P. Now at the same price levels, we will see what happens when there is change in the quantities of other goods. Now for example, when we see the increase in the price of other goods, okay, so when the prices of other goods it will increase, then what will happen? The production of such other goods will become more profitable, and the quantity which is that is initially sold, that will shift towards the left hand side. So you can see the green line. Can you see the green line, children? With the same price level, the quantity will be decreasing. So it leads to a leftward shift in the supply curve from the black supply curve to the green supply curve. It denotes a shift in the increase in prices of other goods. Similarly, when we talk about decrease in price of other goods, so whenever we are talking about fall in the prices of other goods, make production of the given commodity more profitable. That means what is the original commodity that is supplied, that becomes more profitable. So over here the supply curve increases, the quantity that is supplied in the market is increases. Because why? Because the other goods supply decreases. Therefore we see a rightward shift in the curve. And if you see the compare the black supply curve with the red supply curve, when there is increase in quantity, you will see a rightward shift, which shows that when there is decrease in prices of other goods, the original or the initial commodity that was produced, its demand will or its supply will increase in the market. Next factor of production was next factor was factors of production. Here also we will see what happens when factors of production increase or decrease in the economy. So on the y-axis you will find the price, and on the x-axis you will find the supply, which is given in units. Now what happens when there is increase in price of factors of production? We know factors of production are land, labor and capital. So what will happen? Rise in price of factors of production increases the cost of production, isn't it? If land, labor, capital or entrepreneur, if the prices increase, naturally the cost of production will also increase, and it reduces the margin profit. That means whatever was the profit that was incurred, more and more is going into the payment of land, labor, cost, capital and entrepreneur. So therefore the margin of the profit becomes less. As a result, what will happen when the profit margin will become less? The supply will fall from OQ to OQ1, and when the supply falls, we see a leftward shift. The orange curve, if you will see, the orange supply curve, if you will see, it will shift to the left hand side at the same price level. Now what happens when there is decrease in price of factors of production? That means the factors of production, if the price is decreasing, what will happen? the entrepreneur has to pay less. Therefore, the cost of production will also be low. And if the cost of production is low, the margin of profit becomes higher. So from OQ, the supply will reach to OQ2. And when it happens, it goes from OQ to OQ2, the supply curve will also expand and it will shift towards the right hand side. So if there is decrease in the price of factors of production, meaning land, labor and capital, if you don't have to pay much, cost of production will also be less. Therefore, the profit margin will be more. I hope this is clear, children. Next, we move on to what happens when there is change in state of technology. Here we use the terms upgradation and degradation. So let us understand this with the help of the graph. Now, we all know that technological changes affects the cost of production. That means if the technology is good, more units, more unit of quantity will be produced. Henceforth, most there will be supply in the market. But if the technology goes down or if it starts degrading, what will happen? If the technology breaks down, there will be less of production of the commodities, and therefore in this market also less amount of units will be supplied. So when we talk about upgradation of the technology, advanced and improved technology, it reduces the cost of production and raises the profit margin in this case, because the whole thing is done by the technology. The whole production is done by the process of machines. So what will happen here? The cost of production will be less and the supply will be more. That means the profit will also be more. So the supply will rise from O to OQ1. And if you compare the black curve with the green curve, supply curve, you will see there is a rightward shift. That means when the technology is upgraded or it is in good condition, then more units of quantities will be produced and therefore supply will also be more. But what happens when there is degradation? The curve will shift towards the left hand side, this pink curve, if you may see. Why? Because as and when the technology becomes more old and old, it increases the cost of production. It takes more time to produce things and all. So naturally, supply in the market will be less. Hence, the margin profit will also be less. Therefore, it will shift to the left hand side. That means the quantity from Q, it will decrease to Q2, which is supplied in the market. Next, we move on to change in taxation policy. What happens when there is change in when there is increase or decrease in taxes? Now, speaking about increase in taxes, okay, whatever tax they have to pay, say suppose they have taken land tax they have to pay, or GST that is applied on the all these taxes which are applied, if it increases, then what happens? We can denote, see, over here this is P, the price at the constant level, and this is the Q, the original quantity of unit that is supplied. Now, if suddenly the GST or the land taxes or water taxes or electricity taxes increases, what will happen? Rise in taxes will increase the cost of production and reduce the profit margin. As a result, the supply will fall from OQ to OQ1. And once the supply falls, we can see the black supply curve, it will shift towards the left hand side. And if you see the orange supply curve, it is a decreased supply. It shows that the supply in the market has been decreased. Therefore, it will show a leftward shift. What happens when there is decrease in taxes? That means a producer is there and instead of paying 20% tax, he is paying only 10% tax. Naturally, the profit will go up, isn't it? So what happens when the profit will go up? The marginal profit will be more. So when he or she has to pay less tax, the quantity supplied will also be more. Isn't it? Why? Because the cost of production will also fall down. So over here, this will increase the supply from OQ to OQ2, and hence you can see this pink color supply curve, that it will shift, that from black curve it will shift to the right side, and therefore it will denote that there is increase in the quantity supplied. So over here we have seen four different you can say factors that influenced the supply. What happens when there is changed in these other factors? Other factors being, the first one was price of the other goods. What happens when when the price is less or more, decreases or increases? Then second, we have seen change in price of factors of production. Then what happens? It increases and decreases. Then we have seen the other factor, that is upgradation and degradation of technology. And the last that we have seen is the increase and decrease in the taxation policy. I hope you all have understood this much, children. Next, we will move on to the very important topic, that is price elasticity of supply. This you will find, children, in my next video. I will stop here only. In my next video, please continue with or follow up with price elasticity of supply.